Israel's external intelligence Mossad has carried out some audacious operations. It kidnapped Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann from South America and brought him to stand trial in Israel. Again, in the 1960s, it infiltrated a spy, Eli Cohen, into the very top hierarchy of the Syrian government, and his intelligence was responsible for Israel winning the 1967 war. But literally nothing compares with Mossad's pager bombings of the Hezbollah leadership, which it carried out on the 17th of September. Thousands of booby-trapped pagers blew up, killing and disabling top Hezbollah leaders. Now, a Reuters investigation has detailed astonishing new facts about the pager bombings, this complex, innovative and audacious operation that was meant to disrupt Hezbollah's command and control. Now, this operation was the result of years-long investment in resources, in front companies, in technology companies. It started with Israel letting Hezbollah know that there was a danger when smartphones were concerned, that they had to switch over to pagers. And then they identified the supplier from whom Hezbollah would buy pagers from. And then finally, the ingenuity of the Mossad agents who built these pagers, where the technicians, Mossad technicians, found a way to insert thin sheets of plastic explosives into the pagers to trigger them off when they were being used by Hezbollah simultaneously. And Israel knew that upon receiving the pagers, Hezbollah would likely check them for explosives, which they did. But these booby-trapped pagers passed the test. From creating a backstory to actually making the product and then executing the plan, the shock and awe of both the adversaries and friendly nations of the pager blast operation shows a degree of sophistication that one needs to pull off operations like this. So how was this operation conceived and constructed? Joining me to discuss this are Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former DG Infantry, Colonel KPM Das, cybersecurity expert, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Deepak Badana. Colonel Das, I want to start by asking you this. We've gone over the pager blasts a few weeks back, when last month in fact, when it came to light. Now with this new Reuters investigation, what are the new facts, the new details that have emerged that cause you to regard this as a one-of-a-kind operation?
Right. So, one, from an architectural point of view, this is to draw analogy to a kinetic conflict.
Right.
This is getting somebody into a killing ground.
Yes.
And then you have the final, outcome. Yeah. So this is an analogy from the kinetic conflict. The first thing that they did is, and personally, there are two sides to this.
Right.
You have the operational side and you have the technical side. Honestly, I'd give more credit to the operational side, which
Right.
is about intelligence, which is about control over the entire supply chain,
Yes.
etc., rather than the technical side, which to me is not a major surprise, because, having been in some form engaged with security of supply chains, I don't find it a surprise.
Yes.
But the orchestration of this attack,
Right.
the conception, the orchestration, and even the way the dots got connected right across from planning, design, manufacture, supply, and then eventually, letting these things go. Yeah, that required a degree of sophistication and mastery over supply chain. And that nuance and understanding comes to very few organizations, to my mind.
Right.
And for a moment, remember that these are commodity devices.
Right.
Pagers are like onions and potatoes.
Yes.
Yeah? To have re-engineered those internally,
Yes.
in a manner that you don't draw alarm, by and large, the form, shape, weight, size are not tampered with. And I understand from the Reuters article that it did go through some degree of review.
Yes.
Though I have my own doubts, essentially because the power capacity was 1/3 or 1/4 of what one would expect. So all in all, an operationally brilliant operation.
Right.
Technically, many things that were done right from planning, design down to eventually the attack,
Right.
orchestrating all of those. And the point is, this didn't happen on the 17th. This happened on the 18th as well,
Yes.
on a different inventory altogether,
Right.
right? And ICOM is a household name across security organizations around the world.
Yes.
It's not a high security device, it's a common walkie-talkie.
Yes.
But you will find it almost in every city, every town, every village of the world.
Right. Right.
What essentially they did is they also tampered with the branding fundamentally.
Right.
And to go to the extent of even putting up online stores and getting fabulous reviews
Yes.
for both the ICOM and the AR-924,
Right.
that is brilliant.
Right. Brilliant indeed, as Mossad operations have shown us in the past. They've, literally led the way as the world has watched in shock and awe. General Kulkarni, I'm sure you've read about all of Mossad's operations in the past, but this new pager operation, while it may be very successful, it's actually won the Israeli intelligence community a lot of plaudits, deservedly so. What are the lessons for us here in India? Do you feel there is a possibility that this modus operandi could be used by our enemies against us? And what would you learn from this kind of an operation for when it comes to protecting the Indian leadership, protecting Indian assets, protecting the Indian forces?
Thank you, Sandeep. And again, every time people say Atmanirbharta.
Yes.
Atmanirbharta. That is, until and unless you do manufacture, imagine in this, so very imaginative, audacious,
yes,
technically sophisticated, and amazingly, just see the stages. The
yes,
Israelis are in complete control of the Hezbollah logistic chain. They have
yes,
got into it. Imagine a device which is as thin, totally sophisticated, that explosive device you put in, not to be detected, and also at the same time must cause harm. It must pass through X-ray machine,
yes,
and then to be able to execute at a time of your choosing. And knowing fully well that it is Hezbollah control. That means they have penetrated so deep in, and
yes,
even the Iranians feel miserable because Iranians themselves know that maybe in their own setup, even the
yes,
the ones who are guarding the religious leader, they may be Mossad agents for all one care.
Right.
And the very fact that Hania was, the way he was knocked off in Iran,
yes,
was clear indication that Mossad is everywhere. The tentacles are deep in, and therefore it's very important for us, first and foremost, verify, trust, and now, well, like you use the word shock, or
yes,
total sowed distrust amongst all of us. And it's
right,
very important in these kind of operations, or even for that matter our own mobiles, because everybody is using mobiles, everybody is
yes,
using platforms. Even the supercomputers are either China based or US based. So everything is abroad. Even all our the data sovereignty,
yeah,
the data credibility, the storage of data, not to let anybody else get into it. We have to have everything stand alone. If you don't have stand alone and
right,
you're dependent on somebody else, you are bound to, compromise can be expected. And
right,
therefore, we have to be very careful, especially now when you know China. Imagine the involvement of China in this. Imagine
yes,
the involvement of Russia in this. Involvement of everyone deep into it. And how they have managed to do everything is
right,
amazing. Therefore, I think for us, for the Indian security, it's very important. Atmanirbharta. Do not, even if it's a little crude, even if it's a little more expensive, it
right,
must be your own. And people around must be checked, because you never know. Even our own people sometimes can be bought. And therefore,
right,
it's very important that such a thing, and especially communication, because
yes,
without which you can't do. And then to be able to choose targets and then blow them up. I think Hezbollah's defeat started the day the pagers started blowing up and walkie-talkies.
yes,
The defeat of Hezbollah was seen, and Iranian on the back foot was visible. So
right,
imagine how within about a day everything
yes,
changed overnight. Where Hezbollah with a lack of fighters, 2.5 lakh kind of missiles, and what you have, tanks and artillery in southern Lebanon, deeply into it, tunneling.
yes,
All of it went in thin air.
right,
So therefore, we have to be very careful. And again I say, Atmanirbharta, not to be said, but
right,
to be done and executed in India.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. We have no option but to be Atmanirbhar or self-sufficient. But Colonel Das, this, how important do you see Atmanirbharta in, information communication systems. We've been talking about it for a very different reason, of course, the fact that, safety and security of our systems, given the high levels of Chinese penetration of our organizations in the past, using their software, hardware indeed. But this actually is a different kind of a threat where you have weaponized hardware devices. How much of a threat do you see this as being to our ICT networks, this possibility of it being weaponized by adversaries, smuggling in plastic explosives into that, and also the other aspect, which is the traditional fear of using foreign equipment, foreign software, foreign hardware in our systems that could compromise national security. Your thoughts, Colonel Das?
Yeah, so there are multiple angles to this whole thing, right?
Yes.
So I immensely respect this Atmanirbharta theme. I've been hearing it for 20 years.
Right.
As an outsider, speaking at many of these military seminars, the theme remains at the 30,000 feet level. I have seen zero execution until very recently. Okay, so there's a lot of work that we need to do, and especially among defense services, I tell folks, especially in the Army and the Air Force, to follow what the Navy is doing. Navy is a leader in this clearly, and they began doing Atmanirbharta even before it was coined.
Right.
And it's a platform-based service. That means if a ship sinks, everybody goes, equipment men, everybody. It is unique to Navy. It is not seen in the Army and the Air Force. So if I were to talk to commanders today, I would tell them to begin with by saying that your networks have been penetrated.
Right.
Okay, so you operate at that level. Yeah. So you begin with a level of distrust, and what it brings in is a certain protocol, certain doctrine, communication doctrine, certain command and control doctrine, which actually ends up adding an overhead in terms of time and latency and delay. But like the general said, we rather live with that.
Yes.
Okay? So that is one. The second thing is, where you can, as far as possible, build on whatever you already have. So this chase for high tech which goes on, this cycle to chase high tech, it's all very well in a civilian corporate factory or an enterprise.
Yes.
But in military, you need platforms to settle down, get stabilized, get trusted at all levels. And even for the doctrine to get, for people to immerse themselves, it takes years, right? So this whole 15-year procurement cycle, there's a reason why it is 15 years. In fact, in some of the platforms, it goes beyond 20, 25 years. We can live with 386s, and believe me, I know people who are still using 386 and 486 for compute. Right. So, but that requires a degree of technical acumen and a certain commitment from the general staff.
Yes.
Like you see in the Navy.
Yes.
You'll notice in the Navy, the communication branch is with the executive branch.
Right.
That is a huge difference. Now, what happens especially in the Army is the general staff invariably delegates it to specialists, which is not a bad idea. But they delegate even the control, right? Which is why you now find that this very glamorous, sexy-looking technology which come in are the ones which are going to kill you tomorrow. Right. So you need to have stable technologies which are at a very high TRL level, right? 9 or something like that, so that on which you can innovate, build a lot of packages which are Atmanirbhar. Right. You can pick up system. Navy does it. For example, you pick up a legacy platform, an old Russian platform, and then on top of that you build a wrapper which is thoroughly Indian, thoroughly Atmanirbhar. So that is something that we could do all the time. And I recommend that as a strategy going forward.
Right. Follow the Navy in times of doubt, as Colonel Das mentioned. But Deepak, you've also been looking at the story very closely. What is the biggest takeaway for you as you were reading this Reuters report that came out about the depths, the levels to which MOSSAD, the attention to detail that they had gone to while planning this pager bombing operation?
So there are several points. To begin with, the investigation at least solves the mystery behind how they did it.
Right.
So one of our biggest fears was this conversion from cyber to kinetic.
Yes.
Imagine a software.
Possibly the first attack of its kind.
Exactly.
Which is converted from a cyber attack into a kinetic attack.
So the fear earlier was from some quarters that the ignition or detonation is actually being done via software or some
Yes.
call. There were talks about, a synchronized message that went
Yes.
on every one of these
Let's
pages.
ask Colonel Das this.
Yeah.
It's always been on my mind. How did Mossad manage to trigger off all these pages simultaneously? More than 1,500, 1,600 of them. Do you believe that they had, penetrated Hezbollah's, pager network, that the central control system that sent out these messages? How did they send out that one message that went off
And what
simultaneously?
is the mechanism? Is it the message that prompts the overheating of that detonation?
Yes. Colonel Das, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So there are possibilities, okay? So I'm not sure how many people have used pagers. Back in 96...
All of us here, except Deepak, young Deepak here, have used pagers. General Kulkarni certainly. Colonel Das, of course, you've built them. But yes.
So you see, essentially, this is a broadcast device,
Yes.
right? It's an excellent broadcast device, and to a large extent, the Hezbollah's decision to move to to pagers made a lot of sense.
Right.
In fact, Indian Army learned a lot of stuff from LTT in the late 80s,
Yes.
honestly, and that's a different story I can come to later.
Right.
But if you have tight discipline
Yes.
over your communications, pager is excellent.
Right.
So what they did is they allowed that period of time for them to feel confident,
Yes.
right? And after that, technically, there are multiple possibilities. One of them is that you have a message which goes in. It is likely, so in our mind, from what I've read, it's only the pager battery which was spiked, which was
Right.
poisoned,
Right.
inserted. It is very likely it was something beyond that, which connected the data stream and the pagers
Right.
to a certain cycle in the circuitry, yeah?
Right.
Which went and then obviously caused the current overload. The current overload caused heating. Heating caused the detonator, that thin little strip, inflammable
Yes.
strip, to spark.
Right.
And then, of course, the rest of it followed.
The size
this
of a
is one
1 rupee
possible-
coin. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that is very, very possible. Yeah. And in any case, remember, out of a potential real estate of 8 point some, watt hour, that is typical pager power, these guys could only squeeze in 2.22 because the rest of it was used for explosive, right?
Right.
And therefore, the very chances that this would also get overheated, right? So it is like a cycle, a
Yes.
negative cycle, right, which begins and then it spins out of control, and all it does is heat and generate that spark.
Right.
Yeah. There is another report which said, I can't figure out when, which said there was some message format
Yes.
which actually, in some cases, I'm told some of these guys threw the pages away,
Right.
the smarter lot.
Right.
I've heard this. This is not validated.
Right.
So in the realm of technology, this whole message overheating through excessive current and
Yes.
resistance, and then setting the spark is within possibility. Yeah. But I go back to what General Kulkarni just said, which is I'd give more credit to the whole operational side of things.
Yes.
The whole orchestration from planning right till boom.
Right. Whole orchestration cycle from planning to boom. General Kulkarni, apart from Atmanirbhar Bharat, which of course you've emphasized is the way to go forward, and Colonel Das seems to believe that that's at 30,000 feet above. It's so high up, it's not really reached the ground now. Do you think operations like this have made it imperative for us to go? Is this a wake-up call for some, for most of us here, beyond just the brilliance of the operation? Do you see this actually having created a lot of talking points within the government, or are we still, we are not kind of figured out how significant this operation is? Like you mentioned at the start, that there's no way to go but Atmanirbhar. Even if it is not 100%, you have to go for it. Your thoughts on this?
Sandeep, it is, what Kaldas is saying is absolutely right. It's all in the realm of talking. We
Right.
have time has come now to execute, and
Yes.
execute by danda. There is no question. You know, when we make our GSQR, we read magazines, we read this, that, and we bring in all kinds of sophistication and everything. That's not required. You have a mobile which may have 100, the kind of features. Do you actually use those 100 features? Probably 10 features are only trying to extract data out of your mobile, and the rest of the features are unused. So therefore, we have to be very careful. We have to just see what we want. The Hezbollah had suspected. It's just that the time was short for them. They did suspect what Kaldas says, the draining of the battery. They realized that, of course, they were lured into that AR-924. Luring again, that L1T1. I'll come to that. You know, the luring, better reception, stronger buzzer, interface capabilities, this, that, and big bang words that they use. And that L1T1, you know, the Americans have bought communication cards from China at 1/4 the price. Probably the Americans today must be thinking, oh God, the stars themselves will be getting everything out of whatever the Americans are losing. So it's very important that L1T1, no, I'll give you a mobile which is just about $5,000, which otherwise is available at 55,000. 5,000, let's take it here. And that I'll give you a credit of another $250 somewhere here. Very nonsense. We have to get away with all this kind of a thing. We have to devise our own. Our people are very, very technically sound. Even if, as I said, even if it's a little crude, doesn't matter. No, sir, that weighs 3.5 kg. Our requirement is 3 kg, 0.500. Come on, it's time is enough now. Until and unless we do things which are our own, manufacture our own, and just see our requirement. Forget about the features, international features. No, sir, it sees your face and it recognizes you. Forget seeing your face and recognizing you. You just do what you want. And probably we will be on the right track. Slowly and steadily, like what Kaldas says, Navy is the trendsetter. And we have to learn from them.
We have to learn from them.
Own.
Absolutely, everything has to be our own. You know, there's an element of sales and marketing there, General Kulkarni, when you mentioned the fact that how these Mossad front companies created the fact that, listen, you've got a device that's got an inferior battery, we're going to sell you something that's better. And someone in the government, one of your former colleagues, General Kulkarni, was telling me that, look, we have to adopt that Indian slogan that comes out of an advertising jingle, by the way, Teda hai par mera hai. That, you know, translated, it means that it's crooked, but it still belongs to me. That's the way to go forward to, and you know, that learnings for us here in India from this very brilliant booby trap pager operation that Israel's intelligence agency Mossad has carried out. You just heard it from some of the best and the brightest minds in the business, General Sanjay Kulkarni, Colonel KPM Das, and of course my colleague Deepak Badana in the studio. Learnings for India from Israel's sensational bombing of Hezbollah's pagers. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.